Back, apologize for the delay. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So the following options are all in regard to how to address the extraterritorial service connections. All of those connections that are presently outside of a service provider, specifically the city. But in addition to that, future potential connections that may need service in unincorporated territory as well. So the question is, how do you ensure that service is provided to those connections that need it, that to enable the county to develop as it would like to, and also ensure that the city is able to extend services where needed if the need arises, given that they're one of the primary service providers in the area. So, one option is establishing a regional sanitation district. That would be a fully new formation of a district that you could draw the lines anywhere you wanted them to be to ensure that all areas are included that had the potential for development. This is a great grand solution. There are certain challenges to it though. It definitely addresses those out-of-area service connections. It improves efficiencies across the agencies. It improves consistency of service levels. And then also eliminates disenfranchisement that's currently going on. All of those connections that are outside of the city limits that are receiving service, they're not able to vote for the city council members or indicate anything about rates. They can't protest. So this would be one of the solutions to that. Challenges wise, it would require substantial time because it's such a grand solution from beginning to end. Formation of a new district does take time. It will also take time to get consensus of all of the affected agencies, and it would require relinquishing of local control. For example, the city could maintain ownership of the wastewater treatment plant, but that would be something that needs to be negotiated. And certainly having the district providing services inside the city limits, I don't know how that would be received by the city and its residents. So also the transfer of assets I already discussed. It could be growth inducing, but we did also discuss that frankly growth is limited by the general plan and the land use authority. But because of that, environmental review would be necessary for formation of this new district, which could be costly and time consuming.
That's the question. Who would be the applicant to be pushing that project forward? Because whoever the applicant is, they're bearing the cost, correct?
They can share the cost amongst those that decide to be member agencies or to take part in it. So let's say the county has an interest, the city has an interest, perhaps it encompasses Sunny Slope. All three of them can come together and foot the bill for it. I'd have to look at sanitation district law. Typically, it can be initiated by petition of the people or by resolution of the affected agency, which is either the county or in this case could also be the city. So it'd be resolution by one or the other.
Thank you.
Couldn't we could pay for it too, right? Because the county and the cities are already involved.
That would be, yes, up to the commission. You could certainly foot the bill for the formation. It can be costly though. I think our new fees put formation at, I'll have to look, 12,000, I think, something along those lines. But that would be up to the commission
I
to
thought
determine.
you were talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, no.
Okay.
But we certainly would not want to be footing the bill for the environmental review. That could push hundreds of thousands, depending on what they determine. Let's see here. We also wouldn't want to be the lead agency because then we would be in charge of the environmental review. So definitely prefer to have an applicant for the formation. Another option, and I personally find this option to address quite a few of the issues at hand, is the establishment of a subsidiary district. And a subsidiary district is like a county service area in that it's dependent, but it's dependent on the city. So the city council is the governing body of the subsidiary district. Subsidiary districts, there's only one requirement for them and how you would draw the boundaries. They can extend outside of the city's city limits, but 70% of the territory must be inside the city, and 70% of the registered voters must be inside the city. But this would give the ability to draw the lines to extend outside of the city and ideally encompass a majority of those areas that are outside service connections. The other ideal part of this option is that the city then retains control of its system and of its plant, which I am certain will be a huge hurdle with many of the other options. There was, when I met with the ad hoc committee, concern that it would be viewed that the city has all of the power because they would be the governing body of the subsidiary district. I don't think that's a challenge that can, that should limit this option. I think it can be overcome. I would recommend considering maybe an advisory committee that's a compilation of all of the stakeholder agencies that then make recommendations to the city council when they're making decisions regarding the wastewater plant and services outside of the city limits.
Madam Chair, can I, because that you hit right where my question was going to be, is about, would a subsidiary district, it would be the city council that would be over it, but what about the area outside of the district? Would there be representation? I keep going back to representation, voting, having your person that represents you when you have a complaint in your area, which would be in the unincorporated area. So the subsidiary district does not have representation unless you did this advisory committee?
Correct. It would continue to be the city council, which you can only vote within the city limits for city council. However, with a subsidiary district, if there's, say, a Prop 218 process or something to that effect, they would have voting power, the residents outside of the city limits.
The residents or the property owners?
Prop 218,
Property
property
owners.
owners, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So that changes,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Thank you. I just trying to wrap my head around that whole concept.
What's the difference between that and what it is now?
So the idea behind all of these options is there needs to be a mode for providing services outside of the city limits.
Okay.
Something, some kind of district or entity that is providing the service. Right now there's nothing, and the county is not a municipal service provider. Technically, they just don't provide services unless it's through a county service area, which is another option. But there needs to be some kind of entity providing the services, and it needs to be within their boundaries. So, to answer you, this would provide that. Same as the regional sanitation district would be a means to place all connections within an entity that can provide the services.
I got a question. As long as the word district stays in what you're trying to do, we still have some control, LAFCO, correct?
Yes,
If
for
it goes
most districts,
to
but
the
yes,
one
for
that
all
you're
my
talking about
options.
now,
Mhm.
we're out of the picture if it goes through, right?
Subsidiary district is still under LAFCO jurisdiction. That would come through LAFCO.
But once it's approved, are we still there?
Mhm.
Okay.
Still have control over any changes to its boundaries. One of the issues with this, potential option is that obviously if 70% of it has to be within the city limits, that it's not going to extend all the way to San Juan Bautista. But they can still contract with the subsidiary district as two public entities, so I don't see that as an issue. Let's see here. The next option is forming a joint powers authority. And this one is great because it's an immediate option that's available. And it could be transitional. You could do the JPA moving into one of the other options. If the intent was a regional sanitation district that's not going to be formed for a few years, why not do a JPA first as that's being formed? Also, it does not require LAFCO approval, so it's fairly streamlined. The only thing that needs to occur is consensus amongst the member agencies. That would be the time-consuming part. But each one of the options is going to have that issue, so JPA is a great option. The primary challenge of the JPA is that who will be the member agencies involved in that JPA? And I say that because we just talked about there needs to be a means to provide the service in the service area that we're talking about. So there needs to be a district involved that's providing services outside of the city limits. So the county should be involved, but the county won't be providing the services. What about San Benito County Water District? They are empowered to provide those services. They haven't to date. They could activate those powers. This would rely on their willingness to provide wastewater services. They could provide those services by contract with the city so that they wouldn't have to be involved in the actual service provision if they didn't want to, but San Benito County Water District could do that. And then is Sunny Slope a member agency to the JPA? Probably. So those are all questions that will need to be answered, is who will be involved, which agencies?
Madam Chair. So, just to wrap my head around this, because I think COG is a JPA. Is that Council of Government is a JPA? Is my understanding. It was formed between all the agencies for the transportation item, but that's what you're describing, is bringing agencies together, having representation from each of those agencies, but it kind of operates independently.
Correct. So
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, again, wrapping my head around it.
And definitely, it all depends on what the stakeholder agency wants. Like, what portion of wastewater service provision is it dealing with? Is it purely administration? Is it, do you have to go back to your governing bodies to get confirmation before making a decision? That would all be outlined in the JPA, and it's up to the member agencies to determine that.
Is that, Jennifer, what you're saying that you have to get a lot of different districts involved in it, right? Would also the hospital district be involved in that a sewer district? No?
No, probably not.
And this is gonna create a lot of work for you, correct?
The
if we went
JPA,
that
no.
way.
The JPA, I would have nothing, or LAFCO would have nothing to do with the JPA, except for the fact they would have to file with us. They're supposed to give us the, JPA when they have it complete. But other than that, there's no LAFCO approval. LAFCO could certainly, for any of these options, provide support in continuing the conversation to ensure that there's some kind of momentum toward the solution. But, which would include a JPA, but otherwise, nothing else.
I got a question, like Angela, I'm trying to wrap my head around. Say, I'm gonna what if, we did go in that direction, then, do you send out notices that this is gonna happen? One, two, the city can still be under control of the sewer system, correct?
With the JPA, sir?
And then, well then, what is the other folks, the JPA, how does that work?
So it would really just depend on what the member agencies wanted. Maybe the JPA is for the operations of a regional wastewater system. That includes the city continuing to maintain ownership of its property, but all of the member agencies that are sending effluent to the wastewater treatment plant then pay a portion of the bills to run and operate or to purchase a portion, say, of the capacity, which I'll also talk about, but something to that effect.
And who gets the money to, I mean, the fees every month? Does that go into the JPA as a whole?
Yeah, that would be up to them to determine. It would,
The JPA.
Yeah, up to the JPA and the member
So,
agencies.
does that take the decision away from the city?
Regarding where money will be used,
Yeah.
I think as long as they outline it clearly in the agreement that it should be fine, it would give the city discretion to use the funds on whatever capital needs or improvements.
Cause, I know that the city does not wanna give up control of the sewer plant. And that's why I'm trying to wrap my head around a JPA. I really still don't know how that works. You still have a city, their board, and then you have a JPA board, but who has the authority?
It depends on what authority has been given to the JPA. But that would be up to the city to decide what authority it's willing to relinquish and give to the JPA.
It'd be up to the two entities in the beginning.
And the other member agencies.
Okay.
Yes.
So my understanding, just because of having to deal with the hospital district on this item,
Yeah.
it's a negotiation between whatever agency. So if we added the city in the negotiation for the hospital one, I'm using it as an example, it would be all of those agencies would have to agree. And one of the big things that we always talk about at the hospital level is assets will be retained by the hospital. They will not become assets of the JPA. So we would do in the negotiations of the agencies, that's the kind of thing that they would discuss, is that the assets are still the city's assets and they'll stay the city's assets, but the authority of these items, whatever they may be, we are saying the JPA can have. And then there are ways of backing out of the JPAs so that if it doesn't work, you can go down another path. It's just a tool like in transitioning. I like the idea of the transitioning. It's just I never even thought about something like that. But it is all about the negotiation and how it's written. And so you're saying that LAFCO can be part of the moderator, I am trying to use the right word, the
Yeah.
moderator or someone that could be available to help the agencies negotiate.
Correct, or also
I guess
just.
the point I'm getting at is, who's the boss?
It's defined by the negotiations of the two entities that write up what the rules of the JPA are. And it could be anything. You can give up this power, but not this power. You can, that's the big question, and that's why it's so hard to explain to the public what a JPA could look like, because you have to sit down and negotiate what a JPA would look like. Great questions.
But yes, to answer your question, LAFCO could act as a mediator, but also, I would say initially, just ensuring that the conversations are continued, that there's continued momentum towards finding a solution, because LAFCO has limited ability to initiate any one of these options. It will really be up to the agencies themselves. So providing them a means to continue the conversation will be important, and I think that's where LAFCO's role will come into play. Let's see here. So I also mentioned that San Benito County Water District has the ability, that's going to be either the county or San Benito County Water District could buy a part of Hollister's wastewater capacity to provide services to the new developments that are near Hollister. This could be done in combination with the JPA. But the reason I throw San Benito County Water District in there is because, once again, there needs to be a municipal service provider providing those services. So, it could be San Benito County Water District. It could be a CSA, say. Some kind of district that is providing the service. So they would purchase a portion of the city's wastewater capacity, and that would be their capacity to do with as they please. That ensures that the county can make decisions about developments independently of the need to come to the city each time a new development is in play to get a commitment from them to provide the services there. So I think this is a great solution, probably in combination with that JPA, to ensure that the county can, like I said, independently make those decisions about development.
Jennifer, I hate to interrupt you again, but what you're just talking about is the same thing that I believe Sunny Slope did to resolve the college problem. They bought from the city X amount of, I don't know if it's hookup or gallons, and then they left those out, and then I believe they collected, and then they paid the city for whatever that is. I think that's how it worked, and then they kept a percentage for the fees, which was all in, I guess, the fee structure, but
So it would be just exactly something like that. It would be important to define it as buying a portion of the capacity, because, like I said, it carves out dedicated capacity to the county, or whatever county entity is representing the county, the county water district.
I hate doing this. I'm sorry. I feel like we're playing ping pong because Richard asked, and then because he's making me think about other options in combination. You keep bringing up how this could all be combinations, and so would you say that another combination, if San Benito Water District is not interested in getting into the wastewater business? I don't know why anyone would want to get into this business, but if they say, we're really not in the mood to get involved in this, could it be a different combination of a CSA of the county unincorporated area contracting with Sunny Slope in purchasing capacity to work through the city? I mean, could it be a three-way combination? Because I just don't see, Sunny Slope Water District is not going to become a big sphere all the way around the city, and we're making a donut of a district. It would have to be like two separate entities. But it could be a CSA for unincorporated wastewater, or whatever you want to call it, and then contracting with either or both the city of Hollister and or the city, or the special Sunny Slope Water District. And we keep it all under the capacity agreement.
Mhm. Yeah, certainly.
But then the control is at the city level of what the capacity of growth is, but we're paying into the system to ensure that that funding is available for future growth.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if there would be a need to go through Sunny Slope for that option, but that is definitely an option, and I actually bring it up at the end here. But the formation of a county service area surrounding the city and the areas that have extraterritorial service connections. And then you could just contract directly with the city. I don't know that there would be a need to go through Sunny Slope.
I'm just looking at different options
Yeah, yeah.
because I know you can go straight to the city, but if that option didn't work, is there another option?
Yeah.
Angela, you're absolutely right, because I've discussed this with the directors up there for probably quite a few years. They don't want no part of the sewer, is from my understanding. I could be wrong, but
I presented this to the governance committee, and there were definitely some smiles and some Kermit the Frog faces, I would say. So, yeah, and definitely that's one of the challenges that I've put here. It's really dependent on their willingness to participate. So another option instead of the county water district would certainly be a county service area. And that might be a little bit easier than forming a whole regional sanitation district. It's still formation of a new district, but the regional sanitation district, there's a lot of questions about who retains ownership, if the city could retain ownership of the wastewater plant, and that kind of thing. But with the CSA, there's still, the city retains ownership, the CSA provides the services, and then there's some kind of agreement between the entities. The next one is the county water district and activating its wastewater services. Like I said, they are empowered to provide that service. They are a county-wide service provider, so they can provide services anywhere within their boundaries. It would address the out-of-area service connections and then allow the county the ability to approve developments. This would require some kind of agreement with the city, of course, so in combination with that JPA. It would definitely require environmental review because, like I said, that service is considered growth-inducing and it is greatly dependent on their willingness to provide the service. Or could establish some kind of regional wastewater county service area just around the city and ensure a means to provide the services in the unincorporated areas. This would likely be in combination with either purchasing a portion of the treatment plant capacity or the JPA option. These are options not regarding those extraterritorial service connections. So do I have any more questions about any of those options that were just discussed?
There's a lot of options to choose from, so are you asking us to make a decision tonight on the options that you want us to go? Because I still haven't seen the report in a hard copy, and I'm taking notes all over the page, and it's just not sufficient without having the hard copy in front of me. So Is that the goal today, or are you just presenting to us, given this is a public hearing at the moment? I have 6 options, and there may have been a 7th that I didn't quite get. But what are you asking of us today? Do we need to make a decision tonight?
So this is purely informational
Okay.
and receiving feedback from you. I love the questions because it helps to remind me that maybe I need to flesh that idea out a little bit better in the report. As far as the options go, we can certainly make a recommendation in the report. All you're obligated to do is to identify the options. I think analysis is necessary, so we definitely discuss what the benefits and challenges would be to any one of those options. If the commission decides it has a preferred option it wants to recommend, we can add that to the determinations in the report. When you have the report in front of you, though, you can look at that and decide if that's necessary.
I did hear you say that there was a preference for the subsidiary district. Just because, like I said, I pick up at keywords like that, and so I highlighted it, hoping to read it more in depth to see what exactly. And then, given your expertise as an executive director, I would tend to lean what your suggestion would be, unless there's something glaring that might be another option for us to go.
I do, personally, I think the subsidiary district checks a majority of the boxes that you need in addressing the issue, and it's probably the easiest solution at hand. All of the other options, though, have benefits and could be used in combination, like I said, to address it. So, but yes, personally, looking at it from my background, that's what I would go with, but I am not the city.
And because I think that was a really great question and so I want to make sure, because this is still a lot to absorb as a new commissioner. So my understanding is we as a body will not be saying this is the option we want you to do. We only can do a recommendation. Then the entities, like the city and the county, the cities, making sure I'm big, and the counties and the special districts, we don't want to forget them, and the CSAs, but they have to take that report that we're going to be sending with the options that we're recommending, but then they negotiate it, and we're available, like you said, to moderate or coordinate the meetings and make sure that they're happening and hope that this doesn't die. Because as you know, at that governance meeting, when you got done with it, I said, so what happens if we do nothing? Boy, did that get a chuckle. You mean like what we always do? And that was what the comment back to me was. And I went, I'm trying to make a point. We got to do something. So I'm using that group to kind of get that conversation started. But that's why I'm understanding now your role and our role. We're like facilitators in this, but we need to also be active facilitators to make sure it doesn't die.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just making sure I'm seeing it, and after hearing your questions, that really brought it all into clarity for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Man, boy, if that's not the truth. It's really frustrating at times, especially for me being here so long.
Mm-hmm.
Just about when you think you're gonna get going on something in a positive way, everything changes. People change on the board. I agree with you. And that's what I like about this body. Now, we're getting something done. Yeah.
So, I think that it will be, once the draft report goes out, and as part of the outreach that I'll be conducting with the agencies themselves, we'll get a lot of back and forth and questions and information and preferences from each one of the stakeholders. that we'll also add to the content of the report and these options specifically. So it will be interesting when we get into that conversation and back and forth in the public review process. So recommendations can change. Okay. So let me go through the rest. That was the most important part and what I was hoping to get feedback from the commission on. But we've got the other options as well. Samuel Batista is looking to update its sphere of influence, but that will have to come to LAFCO to get approved to ensure that it has an up-to-date sphere of influence. Cielo Vista, which I spelled incorrectly, is considered for dissolution. I think there's concerns about financing of back pay. They are something like the residents are $300,000 in debt to the county. So dissolution at this point would be premature. They need to figure out how they're going to address that back pay issue. But they are going through the divestiture process, meaning they will stop providing wastewater services because they are now going to be sending their effluent to the city. The reason they're going through that process at the county level is to ensure that the residents have an opportunity to have kind of a vote or a preference in the process if that's what they desire to do. I think it's the obvious option because they have somebody else footing the bill for the big main line that has to transport the effluent to the city. Otherwise, they would be paying like $28,000 a lot in order to build it on their own or come up with a new facility to replace their currently failing one. And then dissolution of CSA 45, which needs to occur. Finally, is this option of possibly Tres Pinos and Sunny Slope County Water District doing an annexation and dissolution of Tres Pinos. And I bring this up because Tres Pinos was going to be relinquishing its water services in the reorganization that's going on. So they will solely be providing wastewater services. Sunny Slope is taking over the water services, so why not the wastewater services at the same time? It seems to make sense. Obviously, a challenge is going to be you have a governing body that will have to relinquish control to a neighboring agency, which is always a challenge. We've talked about a lot of the challenges of the reorganization process. Number one is consensus amongst the agencies. You can see there's a lot of options. So they will have to decide what their preferred route is. We can make a recommendation, but that might not be their preference. But once they have that consensus, then it will greatly depend on the willingness of some agencies, like the County Water District, to take on services or to join in a JPA. There's certainly a lot of concerns about maintaining local control, particularly if there's a regional governing body that's going to be formed. Funding costs associated with initiating whatever reorganization occurs, like we mentioned, that environmental review could be costly, so who foots that bill? And the reorganization timeline is likely to be long, no matter the option, with the JPA probably being the fastest, the formation of a new district probably being the slowest, but anywhere in between there, we're talking years, right? Next steps. I'll be sending an admin draft to the ad hoc committee. As I mentioned, there are still some minor holes in the report that need to be filled by agencies, but it's substantially drafted, and I'll be sending it to the ad hoc committee to take a look through. It's 250 pages. So be prepared for some good nighttime reading. I'm here presenting the options to you with the idea of getting your feedback to incorporate into the report. I will begin discussions with the stakeholders about these options. I've already presented once to the governance committee, but having one-on-one conversations, say with the county water district, to ask them, are you willing to, say, start providing wastewater services? And if it's a flat out no, then we'll include that in the report so that that option can just be eliminated. I'll then, after those discussions, release the public review draft. It will be out for a minimum of 21 days. And then I would recommend longer if we're able to do that, just because the longer you have it out for public review, the more public interest you'll get. And it's such an important report, why not give them the extra time to ensure that it's comprehensively reviewed. At that same time, when the public review draft is out, I will do outreach to the different stakeholder agencies, making sure they're aware that it's available for review, soliciting them for any comments to make sure that we have everything accurate in the report, but also holding some kind of workshop to receive stakeholder questions and feedback. So that would include the governing bodies, the department heads, the planning commissions, and the public if they desire to come, but some kind of presentation like what you're seeing here on the high-level findings, where questions can be asked and feedback can be given. Separate from a commission meeting, I think it could be a couple of hours long by itself, so I didn't want to couple it with a meeting at the same time. Then it would come back to LAFCO for consideration and adoption. What you are adopting is only the determinations, so it's kind of these bulleted findings at the very end of each section. So that's important to remember, because sometimes there's a lot of debate about, say, one specific fact. You're not adopting that specific fact unless it's part of the determination. So, and then finally, the meetings with the stakeholders to support discussion and continued momentum that I mentioned. Once it has been adopted, ensuring that conversation continues and that ideally some option comes to fruition. So, thank you for your patience. I know that was long.
Questions? Any more questions? No, yeah.
That good? Okay. Great presentation. Because of seeing it before, I was much more alert in some of your areas, so I felt like this time I really got a lot more of what you were trying to say. I like the idea of the workshops, but I'm going to move over to the county for a second. We're working on a schedule of town halls. So once it's presented to the county could have its own little town hall from the county's perspective. Is that correct?
It could if
It could.
wanted to.
Okay, so that's something I will do on the side. That's a topic for another day. This is a way out there question. We've got other issues in our county, as we know. I don't need to list them, you guys all know. But could a sanitation district be created with a sanitary district for trash removal? Are these ever combined? Like, I know they have nothing to do with each other, but if we're looking at other issues that we have, and we're looking at options, the formation, I know there are such things as sanitary districts, which are dealing with trash and recycle and all of that. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
So I'll have to look at what sanitation districts are empowered to provide. Sometimes you'll be surprised in the wide variety of things that can be provided by a district. So let me look and
Okay.
see, but it might very well be that it's approved to provide. Also,
I'm just trying
solid
to
waste
throw out
collection.
options of things that we have that are other issues that might be able to be brought to the table to discuss.
Mhm.
And it's the stuff we don't want. So let's make a district for all the things we don't want. We could make the list really long. I'm sure we could. So, okay, my other questions. What is the purpose, and you might have addressed this, but I wrote the note, so I'm going to ask it again. If you did address it, I apologize. What is the purpose of the planning area? Because I've never understood that versus your sphere of influence, which is what I thought was your planning area. So when I saw planning area on a general plan, I got very confused.
Generally, they're used as just a potential for growth with a longer timeline, right? And the idea being that you want to have a further outlook other than just what's in your most immediate future. Generally, in planning areas, or oftentimes, the zoning isn't specific. There's something very vague regarding, but just to give a general idea of what they're looking at further down the line. So that's what a planning area is for. But also for the purposes of master plans and capital improvement plans, because you need to know what infrastructure you need to serve those areas. And if you're only planning for your sphere of influence line, you get to the edge of it and then you're like, what do we do now? So
Exactly.
that answers.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question is, you mentioned the goal is to update the LAFCO policies with all the definitions of these type of USAs, UAs, planning areas, and all that. But us adopting definitions does not necessarily, and please correct me, does not necessarily require the cities to adhere to those definitions, does it? I mean, how do their terms and our terms, their definitions and our definitions become more consistent?
Well, frankly, I think the Hollister urban area just needs to be done away with. But in order to ensure that, I know the city is already considering that, as well as the urban service area in its general plan. LAFCO actually controls the urban service area, so even if they decide to eliminate that from their planning documents, it would be up to LAFCO to determine what occurs with the urban service area. It seems to me that perhaps it's been unclear that LAFCO controls the urban service area in the past, so that changes have been made independently of LAFCO. But that's where clarity in the policies come from. Frankly, the way you would answer it is just by eliminating that terminology, because I don't know, for LAFCO's purposes, it doesn't seem to be necessary.
And where we get that is if we have our policies in place on our end from LAFCO, and the general plan amendments come from either city, where we say, look, this does not conform with what the policy is of the definitions, you need to edit this.
Mhm.
That's how the process works, basically. I mean, that's where we are able to give them the feedback of, we won't accept your general plan unless you do this. Yeah, it becomes uniform.
So we can certainly comment on it. It's up to them to make the changes to their general plan. We don't have to accept it in order for it to go through the process. But I think by LAFCO eliminating any terminology of urban service area, it becomes non-applicable anyways. There's no more confusion. And we can certainly give them comments, and we will send out notice
And you're working through this with the MSR so that they're understanding what we're working on and they're working. Okay, because I see this is definitely a collaboration back and forth and communication, because if we're not communicating with what we're doing as a commission, it's going to be quite the big shock. And I'm very grateful that we have both of the cities so well represented, and I just thank you so much for everything. I don't have any more questions, but thank you for your report.
Thank you. Commissioner Betancourt, nothing? Commissioner Gonzalez?
Just saying thank you again. I appreciate it. Like, so you're going to bring a lot of clarity once we adopt whatever we're going to adopt and put forward to the municipalities. And so I just thank you because it's desperately needed. So I appreciate it.
This seemed like a daunting task, and I like that we're all becoming uniform and having conversations like this. Thank you. Public comment?
I'd like to make a comment in chambers. Please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, you can press *9 on your phone or raise hand icon on your screen. No comments.
Thank you. Anything else from the commission?
I can't believe. Elliot, what's wrong with you? Greg, do you have any suggestions on?
Y'all don't have to talk.
Greg Alvarado from Chesapeake. Couple of questions. Is there been any thought on these consolidations that maybe, am I wrong in assuming that I've heard comments about the Hollister treatment plant, fears of it can't accepting anything else, it has to expand, of maybe another plant being built? My reasoning of thinking of that is there's plenty of room down there where Chesapeake's treatment plant is. There's like 8 or 9 ponds that Granite Rock had. That all of that could be cleaned up and expanded, and then maybe not only have Chesapeake's, but make Stonegate get off the septics, get connected to it. Everybody from Best Road get connected to it. Any future development of Granite Rock's property, which I know at one time they wanted to put 330 homes in, could get in on it. I've heard that Lima's property, they wanted to develop theirs, make them get on it. Maybe a possibility of Vineyard Estates. I know Jason Noble has wanted to develop his property behind the church with something like 33 senior homes that could get in on it. I know that within the Chesapeake Water District boundaries, there's probably enough room altogether, which would include that granite, maybe 500 connections. And as far as who would govern it, I would say it'd probably be best if Sunny Slope did. And because there'll be the water anyway. Why not? I think it wouldn't be a good idea for Sunny Slope controlling the water and then somebody else controlling the sewage. Need to put it together. The other question is, you said something about sphere of influence. I was just wondering, when is the last time Trespinas submitted one? Because I know at one time there was somebody that was on the board that wanted to shrink it. And I don't know if it ever had. I've asked before and never gotten an answer from them. Trying to get any information out of them out there is difficult. That's all I really have to say about all this.
Thank you very much.
I'll look up Trace Pinos for you, let you know.
Thank you.
I don't know.
I'll just make a comment, being that there were no real maps filed well for many of our special districts. I understand that struggle of finding the documentation, and I've gone through a lot of history to try and find that documentation. And unfortunately, because of the fire at the Hall of Records, all of those records, they're still with us. They've just had to be cleaned, and they're slowly coming back. And so that district information, there's a file. Tres Pinos has everything I could find that was ever, whether it was recorded or not recorded, it's all in a file. So it's a great resource. I just know right now they're struggling with organizing it. So.
As Greg knows, I went to many of their water district meetings for, I don't know, good 5 years, I would say, when I was a planning commissioner. Boy, that was a painting place. But they still don't have in compliance with fire protection, are they? So,
Maybe a future agenda item.
what can we do about it?
MSR review.
Oh,
What is our favorite thing, our favorite acronym? MSR.
and we've done that before over the years, I believe. MSRs on Trespinas hasn't resolved nothing. Anyway, as far as the sewer plant, man, let's go forward with, in my opinion, the easiest for getting it through, in my opinion, is the best way to go. That's my comment. I just want to get her done.
Thank you. Thank you all for the discussion. Looking forward for more. LAFCO financial controls policy. This was a resolution that came in an email for the local agency formation commission of San Benito County, authorizing the executive officer to have invoices under $500. Do we need to say any more? I think the header says it all.
I think it does as well.
Yeah. Questions, comments, concerns from the commission? Commissioner Currow?
1 second. Oh, I know. I did already review this, so I have no comments.
Okay.
What are we voting on?
To allow our executive officer to sign checks for anything under $500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Questions, comments, nothing, concerns? Commissioner Gonzalez?
I'm fine with that figure, thank you.
Thank you.
I-
Public
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I was moving too fast.
comment?
I'd like to make a comment in chambers. Please provide a speaker card on Zoom. You can press the raise your hand icon. No comments.
I'm getting good at this chairing thing.
I was going to make a motion, and I forgot about public comments. So sorry.
Second.
Any other?
I was
any
making a
other
motion
comment?
to approve per staff recommendations.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion per
Can I have a
staff.
second, please?
Richard said second.
Thank you. Motion to approve resolution authorizing to approve the executive officer to approve invoices under $500 by Commissioner Currow, seconded by Commissioner Betancourt. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner Betancourt?
Yes.
Commissioner Currow?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
4-0.
Thank you. Informational items from our executive officer.
Okay. The first item is I'm going to the CalAFCO staff workshop in a couple of weeks here. That will be held in Pleasanton. I personally feel as though I get more out of the staff workshop just because discussions are broken down by the role that the staff plays. So, you know, the clerks will be having separate discussions from the executive officers. So it's incredibly beneficial. So I'll let you know what I learn when I come back. Let's see here, Form 700s were due, April 2nd, and believe I have everybody that is here, has handed them in, so that's great. And I do have access to the ones the county clerk collects, so, that'll streamline it for future years when we have to do that. The, policies and commissioner handbook update. I know we really need to get to work on that. I plan at our next meeting to bring forward the commissioner handbook. We will see how much of it I can bring to you. It's because it's such a comprehensive update, and I have to meet with the ad hoc committee. And it might create a lot of discussion, and it will take a lot of your review time, maybe breaking it down into half and half or something like that. But I'm proposing the commissioner handbook just because it's generally administrative, managerial type policies. When we get to the policy update, those are going to be a lot more substantive. So this should be a little bit easier to begin the process with. So at that time, I don't intend that we would actually adopt anything, but give the commission a chance to read through the proposed changes, provide any feedback or recommended edits or changes or additions, deletions, and then we can consider adopting the changes at the following meeting. So that would be in June. Let's see here. Because of the size of that and how much discussion we'll likely have, the only other item I'm planning on right now, unless we have anything else that urgently needs to be addressed, is updating the application fees at that meeting. And the other reason for that is because at 2 o'clock on that same day, this room is reserved for the special district outreach that we had discussed at the last meeting. So we'll be holding an educational workshop for the special districts. I'll describe what LAFCO is, composition, why special districts may have an interest in being on LAFCO, and then get any kind of feedback from the various board members and staff that will be invited. So I will, after this meeting, forward to you the invitation. I am attempting to contact each one of the directors independently to ensure that everyone is aware, but certainly if you can spread the word, that would be great. Okay. And that is all that I have.
Thank you. Commissioner announcements? Request for future agenda items? Commissioner Curl?
I don't have any because I think we set kind of a big agenda for Jennifer, so I'm not going to add anything at this time. But I would love that email with the invitation, but also do have a cheat sheet for contacts so I can kind of reach out, especially because I know so many of the CSAs and others are in, this is for the special districts for wastewater specifically? Or is this for the collaborative one?
Independent special districts.
Okay,
So
the independent special districts, because I've worked with them, through the election side. I would be more than happy to reach out to really encourage them why this is important to attend. So if you have a contact list, I don't mind making a few calls.
Okay, I'll send you what I have that was provided to me by the county, so.
That's great.
I got a question, can I ask it? Jennifer,
Mm-hmm.
I believe I'm not sure if it's Sunny Slope got the grant for $7 million, and then I think there's $5 million put in that they were gonna dissolve 4 districts. Where's that at? The reason I'm asking is I haven't heard anything I'm sorry. I have it turned off too.
So as far as those funds go, there's monthly meetings that the agencies are holding regarding reorganization. So I take part, I listen in on what they're doing. I don't know about the dissolution of any districts as a result of the Sunny Slope monies and the reorganization.
Well, they
Because-
were gonna supply water, a pipeline, I believe,
Mhm.
that went clear to Tres Pinas.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And, if they're gonna dissolve or consolidate 4 districts into Sunny Slope water, that would have to come to us, I believe.
And they're aware. And
Oh, you're aware of it?
Yes, and
Yeah,
they are
'cause we
aware
don't
it
wanna
has to
lose
come to LAFCO.
that grant is what I'm getting at. We shouldn't be lighting a fire maybe in somebody's, you know what?
Oh, they've had a lot of planning meetings. They're on top of it.
Okay,
They're doing it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, and I don't know if it's within the LAFCO purview, but Flora Road is right on the cusp of the city and the county, and there's been some concerns that have been raised by business owners in the area, and neither the county nor the city can say whose property is what and where the line of demarcation is for the county and the city. So would that be something that we would have seen at some point if there was a dedication? And is that something that you can help get to Steve Loop? Because I would really like to get to the bottom of where the map is and where the boundaries are.
So I just spent an hour and a half today going through 4 years of LAFCO actions from 76 to 80.
Wow.
Because from his information, 76 is when the county offered
In
it.
1976?
Mhm.
Okay.
Like offered it up to the city, and there's confirmation, but it doesn't appear, at least in that 4-year time frame following that communication, that anything came to LAFCO to formally annex it
Okay.
into the city. So it appears to me that Flora is still in the county.
I saw you smile when I mentioned it, so I'm glad that you're familiar with it. Good. Well, whatever we have to do to kind of identify who owns it and who's responsible for it, for the maintenance and the upkeep, is really where I'm getting at. But we are aware of it, as in terms of we as in LAFCO, as in you are aware of it now. Okay. So an answer is forthcoming.
Right, and as it looks right now, from what I saw, is that it's still in the county, in unincorporated county, the
Okay.
entirety of the road, based on the maps that I saw, consistently showing it.
You can see the maintenance of where, I mean, you just drive down that road and you can see the marcation line of who's been maintaining it and who hasn't been, whether it's the city or the county, I couldn't say, but you can see the line where something has been consistently, where the other side has not been
Mhm.
maintained at all.
'Cause interestingly, on the maps, it only shows a small fraction being in the city. There's like a very small line, and then the rest of it is in the county. It's not even down the center line, from what I can tell. I would almost say almost a majority of it is in the county, so I can show you a picture when we get done here.
It's okay, as long as Steve has that information, good. Okay, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, can I just make a comment on that? Anything that you've done that extensive of research, please make sure that the GIS analyst, Renee Anchieta, is aware of your findings so that the GIS maps are updated, because that will help in future communications. Thank you.
Yeah, the county maps are terrible. I thought I could read a map real good, and boy, I gotta study the heck out of them. And especially when lines are really critical. I don't understand that. Anyway, that's I'm done.
No, I have nothing to put on it, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
wait, sorry. Go ahead.
Finally.
I would like to recommend, Vanessa Delgado has been the clerk for LAFCO for years, and I would like to recommend that she go to the staff workshop.
Thank you.
Provided she can, we know how busy she is. Right.
But LAFCO said I should. I can. I have to. Thank you for that. Do we have any further business to discuss? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to,
moved.
okay, second.
Thank you, B. Angela. Roll call.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner Betancourt?
Yeah.
Commissioner Curro?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Oh, yes.
4-0.
Thank you. 6:10. See ya.
Okay.
Have a great night, everyone.
You as well.
Be safe.